They make an MT10 R edition where they put the true R1 engine into an MT10. I'm buying that bike, put it on the internet. Welcome to Two Wheeled Views. I am here to do a full breakdown of all of the bikes that I have owned. Yes, this is a list of 18 motorcycles that I have owned, not just for a day, not just flips. I have owned and ridden for at least a couple of weeks. And this is a breakdown of what bikes they were and how I would score them between 1 to 10. So give you guys a sense of what I thought of each bike. First on the list, we have the Ninja 300, obviously very, very common beginner bike. I started riding back before the, that was a terrible throw. We'll get better at that next time. I started riding back before the Ninja 400 even existed. So it was a 2013 Ninja 300. I owned that bike for almost 4 years. Honestly, great beginner bike. With what's on the market now, I wouldn't rate it too high. So I gave that a 3 out of 10 on my rating. Good bike. I wouldn't judge anybody for getting one used. If that's going to be your first bike, do your thing. But not the best. There's a lot of better beginner bikes out there that I would recommend over the Ninja 300. Now, while I still had the Ninja 300, I bought my second bike, which is a 2017 Z900. So I stayed within the Kawasaki family. We're going to try that again. A little bit better. Stayed within the Kawasaki family, bought a bigger bike, still stayed in kind of that more comfortable naked bike world because I could only afford one and I had that one and wanted it to be a naked sport bike. So Z900, again, great bike. Not a bike that I would judge anybody for buying. I think if you buy a Z900, you're practical, right? You want a good, solid, reliable sport bike, budget-wise, right? It's in the realm. You can buy used ones. Mine was a 2017. It was one of the first years that they made the Z900 and kind of upped from the Z800. Great bike, right? I don't think you can go wrong with the Z900. So for me, it falls right in the middle of the road. I gave it a 5 out of 10. Again, not a bad bike, but wouldn't be a bike that I own anymore, which obviously is relevant with what's going on in my garage currently. So I then, while owning the Z900, after I had gotten rid of the Ninja 300, I bought a KLR 650. I thought the KLR 650 would be a good opportunity to then ride a different style of bike. It wasn't my vibe, right? It was the type of bike that I ended up riding for 3 or 4 months. I took it on a road trip, took it on some dirt roads, and felt like, I'm not really the type of person that should be on a KLR 650. Again, great bike. I'd give that bike a 4 out of 10 just because there are other bikes in the same category that do what the KLR does a lot better. There's one on this list that I would actually name that is on there as well that we've got later on the list. But the KLR 650, not a bad bike. But again, there's better bikes for that. So I only had that for a few months. And then I got back into the sport bike world. I got an MT10. So as you can see, there's a progression of sport bikes increasing in capacity. That does change here in a little bit. But MT10, incredible bike. MT10, can't go wrong with the crossplane engine. You'll see that on my list later as we get further down. That crossplane engine is one of my favorite engines in the market or on the market. That MT10 I gave an 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 because it's an incredible engine. Now, it's not the R1 engine. If Yamaha would just take the R1 engine in its purest form and put it into an MT10 and not make it look so ugly, it would make that 10 out of 10 list, right? You'd have to change the looks. That would make it a 9 out of 10 and then give it the pure engine, kind of do the M1000R treatment on it. And then I think that would be a perfect 10 out of 10 bike. Can't go wrong. Next, we have the 2015 Yamaha Bolt R spec. Now, different style of bike. I get that, right? I got into the cruiser world. Really, the reason I got it is because I was waiting on my bike number 6 kind of during COVID time where there was a backlog. So I was waiting some months for the new bike. So I bought the Yamaha Bolt on the marketplace for pretty cheap, pretty low cost. And honestly, great bike. I actually give that a 5 out of 10. I think the Bolt, if you're looking for a budget cruiser, whether it's your first bike or whether it's your 10th bike or 5th bike or whatever it is, great bike, right? If you want just a fun, peppy little cruiser that can definitely do highways, do road trips, get around town, the Bolt is an awesome bike. Again, not my style. I wanted to get back on the more sport bike world. So The day before my MT09 SP got into the dealership, I sold the Bolt. The Bolt was out the door, happy to get rid of it, use that money, put it right toward the MT09 SP, which if you haven't ridden an MT09, if you haven't ridden the CP3 engine, it is incredible. MT09 engine, CP3, can't go wrong. So that bike gets a 9 out of 10. We'll get into why it's not a perfect 10 out of 10, but MT09 SP, you cannot go wrong. Obviously, you can see that I've got the Z900 on the list as a 5 out of 10, so you can understand how I feel about those two bikes. To each their own, but for me, CP3 versus that 4-cylinder in the Z900 doesn't even compare. The CP3 wins out every time. Okay, so I owned that MT09 SP for about a year, loved it. At the time, a lot of my friends were riding more cornering, little bit more aggressive riding. And I wanted to kind of get into that a little bit, wanted to keep up with my friends, not the highest recommendation, but at the same time, I had always dreamed of owning this next bike. Since I bought my first Ninja 300 back in 2013, I dreamed of owning a Yamaha R1. So I bought a 23 Yamaha R1 fully with the intention of getting rid of the MT09. I did have both of them for a few months at the same time, but that R1 was everything. I bought that bike. I had zero regrets. The Yamaha R1, loved it so much. Incredible bike. I would still give it a 9 out of 10 because you compromise obviously on the comfort. So that's where I said MT10 with that engine, couldn't get better. But 9 out of 10, Yamaha R1, incredible bike. Obviously you can see that I've got one in the garage right now. This is not that bike. Sadly, with the way that I was riding at the time, mistakes were made and I totaled that bike. It was very sad. 3 days after I totaled it, thankfully, I was uninjured, walked away. I bought a Gixxer 1000. I took whatever I had lying around cash and I went and bought an old 20-year-old Gixxer 1000. You can see it's an 04 Gixxer 1000 just because I wanted to get back on a bike and it was affordable and it had low mileage. And I said, I want to get back on a motorcycle. So within a week, I was back on two wheels, back at Bike Nights, and I was happy to be there. But that was not my favorite bike. So to all you Gixxer fans, I owned one. I know it was old. I would love to try a new one. I think a Gixxer 600 as a track bike would be really cool. But 2 out of 10. That Gixxer 1000 it didn't do it for me. I rode that a few times, took it on some twisties, took it on some highways. It was fast. I'll give it that. 20-year-old bike still had a lot of pull in the straight line. But aside from that, I just had nothing going for me. So I quickly, I owned that bike for only a few weeks before I turned around and I traded it for a 2020 MT09. So again, I was back on the 3-cylinder. I love that 3-cylinder engine, that CP3, incredible bike. So I was back on an MT09. This was a 2020, so it was before they made some updates with the electronics, slightly bigger capacity. And I'd say that the chassis just wasn't all that it was with that newer generation. I know there's some purists out there that love the Gen 1 and Gen 2, but it just wasn't quite on par for me. So I give that one a 7 out of 10. Again, that's a bike that if anybody buys a 2020 MT09, you have an incredible bike, and I would own one of those way before buying a brand new Z900. And again, not to diss on the Z900, good bike. It's not the CP3. So take that as you will. Now I then ended up trading the MT09 to get back onto a Super Sport. I missed my R1. I wanted to get back onto a Super Sport, so I traded that for a 2016 R6. So you can see I traded from an 04 Gixxer 1000 up to a 2016 R6, which I was pretty happy with that trade setup. I got myself onto the R6. Now, R6s, incredible bikes. I give that one a 6 out of 10, simply because I was using it as a street bike and not a track bike. I think if I had it solely as a track bike, that would be a 9 out of 10, right? You can't go much better as a track bike than an R6. But for me, I'm a little bit bigger. I didn't fit too well on it. Struggled a little bit on the street. The power band was awesome once you were revving it out, but it's harder to get there when you're using it as a commuter bike. So 6 out of 10, awesome, infamous bike, but I don't think it's necessarily the end all be all. So, I actually, while owning the R6, I then picked up a 2005 R1 that had been wrecked. I rebuilt that back up. I put some new fairings on it, made sure everything was buttoned down appropriately. That was a really fun bike. Now, what's interesting here is I own an 05 R1 and an 04 Gixxer 1000, and the Gixxer was a 2. That R1 I'd give a 7. Honestly, incredible bike, power throughout. It was the inline 4 back from the older R1s. Awesome bike. I would own one of them again. I think that would be incredible to have all 3 generations of R1 in my garage. I don't need Gen 1, but Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4, I think would be incredible. Super good. Honestly, really comfortable for what it was. Fast, and it cornered well. It cornered way better than the Gixxer 1000. So again, I tried putting new tires on the Gixxer 1000 as well. It wasn't for me. But that R1, I would buy one of those again, and you can pick them up for not too much money. So might be something to look into. Now, I then ended up moving from Hawaii back to Utah. So it was difficult to bring the bikes that I had with me out there. So I sold the R1, I sold the R6, and then I picked up, kind of in one go, I picked up a ZX6R from my cousin, and I picked up a 2017 S1000 single R. So I owned both of those bikes at the same time here in Utah. ZX6 was meant to be kind of my track bike that I rode on the street occasionally. S1000 single R was my street bike. Now, ZX6, 7 out of 10. I actually give that a little bit higher than the R6. For me, I just fit a little bit better on it. I felt like the power band was a little better for the street. I can't really think of anything that R6 did that the ZX6 didn't, and the ZX6 was one step above. So 7 out of 10, great bike. S1000 single R, this one I think is where I might be surprising some people. 6 out of 10. And I was leaning to giving that one a 5 out of 10, just because it is. Like, what can you say about the BMW that hasn't already been said, right? It's a great bike, but it's nothing special. You don't get off of it and get super excited. Now, that was the 2017 model. I know the new models have done that M1000. They put the bigger engine in it, or I should say the spicier engine in it. But again, that's not the one that I had. So the one that I had, not a lot of character, not a lot of feel. It was fast. Don't get me wrong. Definitely faster than the CP3 engines that I love so much, but it just wasn't much there for me. So 6 out of 10 on that. So I ended up selling the S1000R and the ZX6 over the next couple of months. Got rid of the ZX6 and upgraded to a ZX10, which super awesome wrap. I'll throw a picture of it here for you. Love that ZX10. I was really stoked about it. But after riding the ZX10 for a few months, my biggest takeaway was that it wasn't an R1. And that might sound dumb, but the R1 just has something about it that the ZX10 didn't have. And every time I rode the ZX10, every time I rode it, I'd get off and say, it's not the R1. So I sold that bike specifically to buy my R1. Now, before we get to that, ZX10, 6 out of 10. Good bike. It's fast. Don't get me wrong. Fast, has some things that maybe the R1 doesn't. But the R1 just gives you a lot more feel. There's way more character. I think the R1 is top tier when it comes to leader bikes, especially in the Japanese leader bikes. I'd be really hard pressed to think that the CBR, Gixxer, or Kawasaki have anything that the R1 does not. Triple R Fireblade is another category a little bit. We won't get into that. But 6 out of 10 for the ZX10. So sold the ZX10, or I guess I'm getting ahead of myself there. I sold the S1000R, and then I bought a Scrambler 1200. So at one point I had the ZX10 and Scrambler 1200 in the garage to be my daily. Again, I picked that up to try something new. Again, I know the KLR 650 I tried a few years back. I figured, hey, it's a new bike. I got it for a screaming deal, so why not try it? Scrambler 1200 XC, incredible bike. I actually like that significantly more than the S1000R. Obviously, it's not a sport bike, it's not as fast, but it had way more character, it was way more fun. I threw an exhaust on that, it sounded great. I give that bike a 9 out of 10. If you have not ridden that 1200 motor from Triumph, do it. Excellent motor, love that bike. To this day, I don't have it in my garage. I don't think there's anything I dislike about the Triumph. Maybe wind protection wasn't that great, but that's the sacrifice you get for how it looks. That Triumph Scrambler 1200, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful bike. And performance is there. You can take it off road. It really can do anything that you want it to do. And I had the XC model, so the lower trim, but I never felt it was lacking. Incredible bike. It just wasn't my style, right? So I did want to get back onto something more a little sportier. So while I had the Scrambler 1200, I sold the ZX10, and that is when I picked up this bad boy. So I've got my 2020 Yamaha R1 here that I bought from a track guy. He helped me convert it back to street trim. So it's got some pretty sick components on here. I will do a walk around of this bike in a future video, but love this bike. Obviously, it's pretty much the same as the 23 R1. I don't notice a single difference from the 23 R1 that I own to this 2020 R1, except this has some better brakes on it. So still 9 out of 10, nothing's changed on the R1 opinion there. Excellent motor, excellent bike, does so much, so well. It's obviously just not comfortable, not a great daily bike, so I don't think it's a perfect 10 out of 10. This is where I then had the R1 and the Scrambler 1200 in the garage, and I love this bike so much. And yes, it belongs on the racetrack, and yes, I track it. But I didn't want it to be my only track bike because I wanted to be able to learn and practice and train a little bit more. So I ended up picking up for a pretty good price a Ninja 400 that is already track prepped, sitting over there in the corner. Already track prepped Ninja 400. Excellent bike. Love it. I think that the Ninja 400 is leaps and bounds above the Ninja 300. Now, this one has a lot of components on it that are pretty great. Again, I can do a walk around of that bike. But I think the Ninja 400, as for what it is in the category that it's in, 8 out of 10. I'd be hard-pressed to find a better bike as a small CC track bike, something of that nature. So I love it. I've tracked it. I've taken it to the track again next month. Incredible bike. So love it. And then with that, I had these 3 bikes in the garage, and the Scrambler just wasn't doing it for me daily. I wanted something sportier, and my heart screams CP3 regularly. So by no surprise, the only perfect 10 on my list is, of course, the bike that I currently have in my garage, which is a 2023 XSR 900. It is perfect. Now, M29 SP, pretty much the same bike, but it just doesn't look as good. So the XSR 900 just looks perfect. It's beautiful. The engine is great. The tech is great. It's comfortable enough. It is the perfect 10 out of 10 motorcycle as a street bike. So that is what caps off my list of the 18 bikes that I've owned. And thankfully, I've got the bike that I've got a perfect 10 out of 10 in my garage. And I've got the bike that I think is a 9 out of 10 in my garage. If they make an MT10 R edition and they put the, or I guess it would be an MT10, you know what I mean? But if they make one where they put the true R1 engine into an MT10 and it doesn't look like garbage, I'm buying that bike, put it on the internet. That is going to be in my garage. And I'd probably get rid of the R1 for it because that would be amazing. But let me know what you think. What do you think of my scores? What bikes have you owned that I should try? I've ridden a lot of other bikes. These are obviously the bikes that I've owned. I think it's a pretty wide variety. So I like to think that I've got a pretty rounded opinion of the street bike world. But let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Remember, you don't have to ride safe, arrive safe.